Let's go ahead and bring to order this meeting of regular meeting of Templeton Community Services District Board of Directors. Today is July 21st, 6:30 p.m. Roll call, please.
Directors Bardonish,
Here.
Logan,
Here.
Mortensen,
Here.
Peterson,
Here.
and Tyrone. Here.
Wonderful. We have all 5 board members here. We have a quorum. Let's go ahead and do the pledge of allegiance. Please stand for. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, please have a seat. Order of business. Do any of the board members would like to change the order of business? Okay. Special reports. Well, let's start with our San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Department. Please, Commander.
Good evening, I'm Sandra Rosa from Templeton office. Stats for the year, we are at 349 reports, where this time last year, the end of June, we were at 310. For last month, we had 1, where last year for the month of June, we had 44. We took 4 reports for assault and battery, 5 for disturbance calls. We took 1 for burglary, 1 for theft, 1 for vandalism. We took about 11 trespassing calls. I looked into some of those. Some of those were like juvenile minor related. It wasn't that we could tell where any like crime was going to be occurring, just kids running around. We did take 1 scam call. If you follow us on social media, I know we try to put some warnings out there also on safety tips on that, and I've covered it here in other meetings as well. And we took 5 reports for suspicious circumstances. I know this is stats for June, but I can talk about the 4th.
Okay.
And we upstaffed as planned. We started with our drone out in San Miguel. We had additional staffing there. Here in Templeton, we partnered up with the chief. We upstaffed for Creston and Shandon as well. The calls surprisingly were about the same for the calls for service. What was interesting was at least some of the feedback, and I don't know about you guys, it seemed like it was not as many as last year. I want to say that in San Miguel, maybe it was because of our presence, and we had CAL FIRE out there as well. And maybe it was the presence there that we had. We did take several fireworks and the launchers that they use. I know that in Templeton, not the deputy that I partnered up with the chief, but the other set of deputies that I had, when they would get to the location where the aerial fireworks were seen, they were confiscating the launcher or the tube. What do we call that? The launcher, the tube, the mortar tube, in the street. But again, it's difficult because anyone will always see a car coming around the corner, and so we couldn't really get them like to a house. But we had 4 incidents of those where they were able to get the mortar tube from the street and take some of the fireworks. That was the same case in San Miguel, other than the house that the drone was able to get, from their footage, and as well as some of the other unincorporated cities. But I do think that our high visibility presence paid off, having worked last year, especially in San Miguel. So we were happy to see that. It wasn't as bad as it was last year.
Well, thank you. Yes, thank you for upstaffing, and I think your presence was very important. So we really appreciate it. Thank you. Any questions? Public, any questions? None? Okay, great. Thank you again.
Yes.
All right, let's go ahead to CHP. Please.
Having me. My name is Darren Janus. I'm the commander for CHP here at the Templeton office. I have second quarter 2026 statistics to compare to last year same time. 47 crashes were investigated during this quarter. 25 of those were on the highway, 22 in town on county roads, 35 were property damage only, 12 injury rated, and 4 were DUI crashes, 3 on county roads and 1 on the highway. 494 total enforcement contacts were made. That resulted in 327 citations. 82 of those were for speeding. 73 of those were on the freeway. 2 of those were for over 100 miles per hour. And there were a reduction in seatbelt violations, 14 compared to 35 at the same time last year. But the DUI arrests went up significantly, 52%. 32 DUI arrests were made, 22 of those were on the highway, 10 on county roads. That's all the information I have from Templeton, but I'm open for any questions or comments.
Wonderful, thank you. Any questions? No. Public, any questions? Okay, well, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Okay, Templeton Unified School District. Our trustee. Okay, sounds good, thanks.
Hi there, Jennifer Grininger with Templeton Unified School District. So we have had one meeting since I saw you last. There's none for the whole month of July, and there won't be, our next one won't be till midway through August. So I think I mentioned last time that we have a new high school principal. So he was introduced to the community at our last meeting at the end of June. His name is David Hawley. We also have selected a Templeton High School assistant principal. Her name is Caitlin Zach, and she's been with our district for a while already. She's been an English teacher at both middle school and the high school, and she was most recently our dean of students at the high school. So she's moving up into that assistant principal position. And then we decided to have a new position, which is split, I think 0.6% at the middle school and 0.4% at the high school. And that's an assistant principal that's covering both of those sites. And that person is Tracy Teese. She's new to our district. We discussed and voted upon a new policy on AI. We're one of the first districts that I'm aware of, certainly in the county and possibly in the state, that is jumping forward with doing a policy on AI. CSBA has put forward a draft, which we did adopt, but we created an administrative regulation as well, and it is specific by grade level. We reviewed our cell phone policy that has been in place for 1 year now. It's been very successful in our K through 8. Their policy is that their phones are to be off and away for the entire school day, and it's been working out really, really well. The high school has had a policy now of their phones being off and away only during instruction time. We were hearing from the teachers that, gosh, it's kind of problematic. They're able to turn on their phones during passing period, but they're having difficulty getting them to turn it off again. So we discussed having it be the same at the high school, but ultimately decided to keep the policy the same for now. So that remains. We also completed our superintendent, Dr. Bond's evaluation, and he received a satisfactory evaluation, would be staying with the district. We added, I think I reported on this before, we added girls flag football and boys and girls wrestling at the high school. And as a result of that, we've added an assistant to the athletic director, Joe Farley. So he'll be having some help in his position. Our budget was approved. The thing that is continuing to affect the budget negatively is the declining enrollment. What's interesting is that we saw an increase in enrollment for TK and kindergarten, but then it decreases for all other grades. So, you know, parents are putting their kids in the district for those early grades and then removing them and doing something differently for the remaining grades. There's still uncertainty for revenue amounts coming in. We'll know more at the interim. There will be an interim report in December, and then we'll have a clearer idea of the budget. That's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you. Any questions now? Public, any questions? Great, well, thank you, appreciate it. All right, public comment. Members of public may address the board on any items of interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, but not on the agenda today. In compliance with the Brown Act, the board cannot discuss or act on items not on the agenda. Are there any public comments that's not on the agenda? Zoom?
I have a question.
Oh, but
Does TCSD currently have any kind of policy or ordinance about short-term rental, vacation rentals?
we don't have to.
No.
Government.
So the county would regulate and does regulate short-term vacation rentals.
All right, so look there.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Unfortunately, we don't get any revenues from them either, so I wish we did.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Okay. All right, consent agenda, we have several items on our consent agenda. We have the minutes from June 16, 2026. We have the treasurer report for May 2026, budget amendment for Peterson Ranch Road valve replacement in the amount of $25,000. We have a letter of opposition, AB 1383, which seeks to make significant changes to public pension. And lastly, we have the budget amendment, Utilities Department electric vehicle. Any questions or comments? Anyone pull any of those items? No? Public, anybody want to pull any of those items? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. Since there are no questions, I'll go ahead, I'll make a motion to approve our consent agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Directors Pardonish,
Aye.
Jorgensen,
Aye.
Logan,
Aye.
Peterson,
Yes.
and Tyrone.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Public hearing, resolution number 15-2026, county tax roll.
Good evening.
Tax officer, it's like here already.
So this is just a routine item before the board this evening for the annual collection of streetlight assessments, the delinquent weed abatement fees, the CFD assessments, and the Measure 8 personal tax. If the board of directors does not adopt resolution number 15-2026, and the collection of these items will not be possible through the 26-27 tax roll. So before you tonight there's 171 streetlight assessments totaling $14,060.80. 30 CFD parcels totaling $84,221.86. 2,722 Measure 8 parcels totaling $551,041.68. And there were 4 weed abatement invoices that went out. One of the parcels paid this afternoon. You have an updated Exhibit A in front of you. That was, and so I removed the APN 040153015. And so the new total for weed abatement is $5,529.18. So at this time, I would ask that the board of directors hold a public hearing and accept testimony on the proposed assessments and charges. Following the public item, the board should by motion adopt resolution 15-2026. A resolution adopting the report on assessments for street lighting, delinquent weed abatement fees, CFD 2017-1 assessments, and fire and emergency services special tax levy Measure A, and authorizing their collection on the county tax roll.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Okay, I'll go ahead and open up, since this is a public hearing, I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to public in case if there's any questions, comments, protests on this item. None, okay, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. All right, back to the board. If there are no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that the board accept and approve resolution number 15-2026, adopting the reports on streetlight assessments, delinquent weed abatements, fees, community facility district 2017-1 assessments, and Measure A partial tax, and authorizing their collection on the county tax roll.
Great, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great, all right, roll call, please.
Directors Logan,
Aye.
Tyrone. Aye. Mortensen,
Aye.
Peterson,
Yes.
and Pardonish.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. All right, thank you. Thank you, Natalie. All right, Everest Park authorization to bid, so, is that, oh, yes.
Good evening. My name is Lori Azim. I'm the district engineer here at TPSD. We also have Mel Johnson, our rec supervisor. This is a little bit of a cross-departmental discussion about some park improvements that we're looking at Everest Park. The process to start this started a long while ago with a master plan to look at how to upgrade Everest Park. And we went ahead and went with what we call the phase 1 improvement project, which in your staff report, we have a summary of sort of the updated scope that was included in that phase 1 approach, which unfortunately wouldn't include the turf upgrade. It includes a walking path all around the park and some improvements to the entrance of the park, which I'm going to go into a little bit more. And also a playground improvement area. So when we started this process, our consultants and the district thought that we would be able to argue that we have what's called an accessible path or disabled accessible compliance from the parking lot of the park, but unfortunately the county did not accept that. That argument from our design team, and they said we had to provide disabled access all the way from the roadway, which is Griffin Road. And as you know, if you've been to the park, it's quite a steep entrance into that parkway. So if you look on your second page of your staff report, you'll see a map, which Terry, I don't know if you're able to bring up the map or the plans, but the county required us to install a pathway all the way from Gibson all the way down into the pathway that then connects to a ramp down to the lower part of the park. So with that improvement, there was kind of a knock-on approach or trigger of widening the driveway and then other improvements in the parking lot, including, we wanted to do the ADA parking spots anyway. And so those additional improvements also triggered some drainage improvement that was requiring us to go ahead and put what's called a biofiltration planter in the low part of the park, which if we were simply just going to add a little bit of pavement, it wouldn't have been triggered. But if you go over 2,500 square feet, there are these additional drainage requirements. So as that path was added, there was a lot of kind of changes to the plans that we worked with the county with through the plan check process that ended up going through 5 plan checks, many years process. And so what we're looking at now is kind of an evolved version of the project that are seen on the plans that were included in the staff report. And we recently received an updated cost estimate from our consultants, MIG, who are also online with us tonight if we have any questions for them, which essentially show that even without some of the items that we have put in what's called an add alternative option, we will be over budget. So currently, the main amount estimate of costs is it's $1,728,900, whereas our capital fund and an additional grant that we've been able to get through Mel's work, we have 1.492 million to work with. So we're slightly less than what was estimated on that, and so really until we go out to bid, we won't know for sure if the estimate is exactly lining up with what the costs will be for the project. So as of right now, and Jeff can speak to this a little bit more than me, but kind of on page 4 towards the bottom, it's showing that the estimate is about 13% higher than our expected funds available, but there is the Parks, Recreation and Solid Waste Fund has an estimated balance at the end of this next financial year of 507,000, which a portion of these funds could be used to close the gap and move forward with the project. Either as a direct contribution or even as an advance to the capital funds. So if we go out to bid and we find that it is indeed over the amount that we've already budgeted, then we would actually come back to the board to talk about using those funds to then award the project. So right now, we're currently, this item before you tonight is to discuss if go forward with the bid process and go out to bid. And then we would come back to you all with the results of the bids to see how close we are. And if we can fit it within the 1.92 million, then we're good to go. But if it is coming in over that, then we would have to have a discussion about how to make up the difference. So kind of backing up a little bit, the items that we did have to remove from the scope that we originally thought would be included was there's kind of like two sections to the playground that were proposed, and the picture that you see above is what we call the hillside play area. So that would be included with this base bid, but there's an adjacent area just to the right of it that we were calling the flat play area. That would not be included with this scope, but staff believes that there are possibly other ways to get that funded with a separate project. So, and maybe Mel, I don't know if you want to speak to that, but it would be a kind of a future phase that we'd bring in that flat area playground. And in the meantime, there were some ideas of things that they could use it for. So the other, I'm trying to think, there's also, I'm sorry, the water fountains.
Yeah.
So we had some like highly fancy water fountains, like the water bottle types that we actually pulled from this scope, and that we actually got another grant to put in the water bottle water fountains at 2 parks. So not just Evers, but also at German. So we were able to find a different funding source for the water fountains. So that was removed from this original base scope as well. So with that, I don't know if Mel or Jeff, you guys have anything to add, and then we can go to the questions.
Trying to kind of clarify to make sure it's clear. So the way the plans that are now ready to be permitted by the county do include a concrete walkway all the way around the park, although 2/3 of that concrete portion is planned to be an add-all bid, which means it's not included in the base bid, but could be included if you felt like you wanted to move forward with it. The same thing occurs with replacing the edging of the DG pathway to concrete as a kind of an in-between. And then that flat play area is a part of the plans, but it's scheduled to be an add-all for the project. So again, wouldn't be part of the base bid, but we would get a cost as a part of the bidding process. And let's just say that our estimates are off and there's enough money to consider awarding one of these alternatives. You could consider that as a part of this project if you did decide to go out to bid. So the items are part of the county's submittal. They're just not anticipated to be funded with the project because the estimate for the base bid already exceeds what our current estimate is for funding available. And I don't know if I know Holly from MIG is on, and if we have any questions of MIG, she's able to answer those.
Thank you for your report. Any questions?
Yes, lots. So thank you, both Mel and Lori. I know this has been a painstaking process and a project that the board has wanted and the district has wanted for a number of years. And I know initially several years ago when this originally came about, we actually took and broke down the project into phases, because when we looked at the full scope of all the improvements that wanted to be made, it far exceeded what we could possibly fund in one swoop. So we parsed it out into phases. So I have a question with, what was the original budget for phase one?
1.1, 1.3, something like that,
Okay,
in 2020.
okay.
We would have had, we would have had like a
1.1.
rough cost estimate coming out of the Brightview work.
Yeah.
Per component, and then we compiled several components to move forward. And then probably about a year into the planning process with MIG, we got an actual an initial construction estimate. I believe that was in 2022. But that was before.
And that, of course, was higher.
It was actually, it wasn't a shockingly high number, but what ended up happening is that at the time, the project didn't include the pretty expensive ADA pathway from Gibson down into the park. And then there were other things that came about because we had to add that ADA pathway, we had to widen the driveway. Then we realized we have this drainage issue to address, and so I had to add additional drainage costs. And then, of course, we've just seen construction costs increase in this sort of post-COVID period.
So have we given, do you know how much all the improvements that the county had requested that we didn't anticipate? Do you know what that cost is?
I could break it down based on the estimate, but no, we don't have like.
Okay, so we didn't separate
amount
out
of
those costs.
Before scope and after scope, we don't.
Was there any consideration given to be able to stay within the initial budget to say, let's carve out some of the improvements that we wanted in our phase one to be able to include the additional costs that the county improvements
Right,
were going
so,
to?
yeah, so the walkway that he mentioned and the basically reverting to what's called DG, decomposed granite, for the majority of the walkway was the biggest thing that we did right away. So we said, you know, all this concrete is very expensive with rebar and all that, so basically we were gonna provide a concrete pathway and ADA pathway all the way to the playground area, but the remainder of the path ended up, we changed that to decomposed granite. We also looked at a different retaining wall design, because when I came into the picture, I said, well, what they're showing is super expensive. Let's just try to reduce to the stacked walls in as many locations as we could. So the cost per linear foot for that went down significantly, like $250 a linear foot. So that was another change. We also, you know, I know we didn't want to lose that flat playground area, but we did, you know, looking at it right now with the surfacing and the playground, it's $328,000. So that's a huge number. I will say that the irrigation estimate numbers that we've gotten from our consultant have varied quite a bit. And so we did look at trying to kind of rein in that scope, because the 2024 estimate came in at $410,000 just for irrigation, which is significant. So we thought, well, but we know we need it because we want to keep those fields looking great. And so, and if we're putting this walkway around, we're having to shift all of the irrigation. So it's just something that's needed. However, in this latest estimate, they kind of dialed it in a little bit more, and it's gone down significantly for irrigation. It's in the 200,000s now. So that number and where it will actually land is something that is still, you know, we won't know until we get the bids in. And, you know, something I had thought about is if, you know, we would like to, if you guys would like to, as a board, actually going to a contractor and having them look at the plans and giving us some preliminary idea of where it would be, if instead of going out for full bid, maybe an option or for various items on here. But yeah, and so
I don't think
I
there's
think
any
those
harm
are
in
the
getting-
those are the largest things that we've looked at.
Yeah.
Just, you know, anytime, anywhere we can use materials that were less expensive, we were trying to do that. the water fountain item.
Yeah.
Again, anything that Mel was like, hey, I think we can find some funding to take care of that. We kind of, you know, took off the plans and.
The only
I
thing
think
with
the challenge we're in right now is what the county's basically saying is we really can't do much to the park without creating ADA compliance to the street.
Yeah, I
And
think,
that's like half the cost.
yeah. I don't think we can ignore that in the first phrase. I mean, because then it's not gonna go anywhere. But with the DG, I know from my own experience, because I have DG in my backyard, my front yard. And it does need to be maintained. So there's weeds that get in there. So you still have to get the weeds. There's also with the rain, if we have intense rain, you know, I've had to have my landscaper come back and redo it entirely. So I hope that maintenance cost is also taken into consideration when you compare it versus the cost of concrete. And I know the cost of concrete is expensive, but I think you also have to take into consideration the maintenance costs of the DG. Yeah, I don't have any, I'm not opposed to going out to bid because I think that it will allow us to get hopefully somebody who's going to bid and give us something that we can really kind of say, this is what the cost is going to be, and we'll know what can be within the scope. I just want to make sure that we stay within the original budget for this project, if at all possible. And if that means reducing the scope of phase one, I think we have to look at that. So
So I just wanted to clarify, then I think it's important, the way the project's teed up right now is the components that Lori talked about are all in the base bid, and these add alts would be to convert that, I'm gonna say 2/3, it's not an exact figure, of that walking path from DG to concrete, or kind of a middle ground, putting concrete edging with DG in there. Those are base bid or add alt 1 and add alt 2. I'm sorry, 1, it's listed as 1 and 1A. And then add alt 2 is this playground. All the other items are included in the base bid. If you know right now that there's components in the base bid that we're not interested in, the time to make that adjustment is now, before we go out to bid. Once we get bids, the bids are for the project that we've put out to bid. And if you wanted to make changes to that base bid, that likely means, because the bids are too high or for whatever reason, that likely means stopping, revising the plans and going out to bid again. You would be able to award the project based on the base bid or a combination of the base bid and the bid alternates. But if you were to scale the project back further, I'm not sure we could use the bids that we would obtain. They're based on this bid, the plans and the bid specs that we have, that we advertise. The challenge that we run into is really we've scaled the project back so it includes a portion of the playground, a portion of the concrete walkway, and then the full ADA compliance. There's not much left to remove.
and if you remove the playground, you won't get the grant funding. Is that correct?
Right.
So
right.
that has to be included
There has to be an element of play added.
in order to get that full grant funding.
In order to get any of the grant funding, the grant is contingent upon pathway and playground.
Pathway, playground and access.
You could remove the rest of where it's not tied to what right now looks like a DG pathway, but that we were reluctant to remove that altogether because it was the most desired component of the improvements when back 5 years ago when we started this process. So that would really be the one item that you could remove. But it's not easy to remove because it affects so many components of the project. It affects like the retaining walls, the irrigation and all of those items. So it's not as simple as build everything but the walkway, because the plans call for modifying all this irrigation to accommodate the walkway and adding these retaining walls and drainage around the park.
I'm just not comfortable with the gap that we're trying to fill here. So, and I understand the walkway was something.
We'll continue on the discussion. Let me just make sure if anybody else has questions. If there's any questions, Okay, I'm going to public, any questions, comments on this item? Okay. All right, I'll bring it back. Right, now we can do the discussion. So, yeah, so you're stating that you feel like the 1.7.
Seven and 1.5.
Yeah, it's a huge jump between those two, but looking at the list of items, I don't know what I would pull out. That's the, you know, the challenge here.
Well, we could just have the staff, if that's how what the board feels, we could have the staff look at that and try to say, you know, we like to be within a certain amount, so. Right, and then you guys.
Well, I mean, we have 1.5, I mean, if you said, look, hey, our goal is not to spend more than we have available, then we could go out to bid and if the bids come in high, I mean, we're about 12 or 13%, the current cost estimate is about 12 or 13% higher than we have funds available, immediately available. So if you go out to, maybe the estimate is high. There's one possibility that this, I don't know that it may be wishful thinking to save a full 12%, but maybe it's 5% high, or the contingencies are padded a little higher than the market requires. We just don't know until you go out to bid. So if going out to bid doesn't obligate you to move forward. The issue really is if we go out to bid and the bids come in higher and you choose not to award it, then we're gonna have to pause, work with our planners to remove, probably the only thing you can remove is the walkway and all the other things that affect, resubmit to the county, because this permit lapses on December 31st. And at that point, we could go back out
Can
to
you
bid
just have
again.
that section
It's not that
separate? No, I mean, just when you go out to bid, just to give us,
Okay,
like, that would be added, yeah, that would be added.
Not really broken up that way at the moment. We'd have to break off some retaining walls, the kind of portion that's connected with the pathway. And the irrigation to adjust it, yeah,
Yeah,
there'd be
drainage.
multiple kind of knock-on effects of we're taking out path, and we don't have to put the walls in, and we don't really have to do the irrigation. Those kind of things, so it would have to be kind of broken up a little bit more in the plans to show like what's base bid and what's considered an adult. So it's.
Naveed, you're saying to remove the pathway,
Yeah.
the walking pathway, or?
The part that Jeff is talking about, just.
Beyond the playground, so we would have an ADA pathway all the way to the playground area.
Oh,
Beyond that.
Then
Extending
the
further.
continuation loop would be.
It's really the rest of, it's like, so right now, the pathway, is it possible to put it back up? Sorry.
We don't have any estimates.
Is that not ADA a requirement?
So,
I know the street is.
so.
To go to the playground is an ADA requirement, and to one of our fields that has to have the
Not
ADA.
around the entire park.
But the second field, that we call field 2, in order to call it accessible, we'd have to actually extend the pathway, like a concrete pathway that meets all the requirements, not greater than 2% cross slope.
Perfect.
We'd have to extend it to field 2 and, meet all those requirements too. But as of right now, the plan set only shows accessibility to field 1.
So basically the path, this is a little odd to see, but the photo on the top side of the page is the south half of the park, and the photo or the diagram on the bottom half is the north half of the park. Everything on the north half of the park essentially is DG and is not required to achieve ADA compliance. It could theoretically be removed, I think, without compromising the rest of the project. And then on the upper photograph or the upper diagram drawing, the pathway that's along the fence line of the railroad track side, the bottom of the top picture is also DG. The pathway from the parking lot, also from the snack bar, which I know is a little hard to make out in this, that goes to the west and then curves to the north towards the hillside play area, has to be ADA compliant in order to build the playground. And so that's proposed to be concrete. So the issue really is, everywhere the path is, because right now the path is placed in essentially the turf area of the park. Right now, turf grows everywhere it can, essentially. And so all of the irrigation system is having to be on the perimeter is having to be moved to accommodate this placement of this path. And additionally, there's changes in elevation and there's some retaining walls and some drainage features to accommodate this pathway. And so it's not just as simple as just saying, okay, well, just don't build that path, but build everything else, because the path itself may not be that expensive.
Yeah.
It's accommodating it.
Why? What is the argument for removing it from the bid?
Well, I mean, the bid is coming at 1.7 million, and we have what, 1.1 in our capital fund, right?
No, about 1.5 between the grant
Well,
and
yeah,
capital.
and the added grant, so we have an additional $250,000 that would end up having to add the operations, our savings, which we have. So I'm just concerned that's just too much of a big gap, and then plus, once this project is done, then you have the annual operation effects by like $40,000, you would think?
Yeah, once we book it,
Maybe 40,000, another 40,000.
well, if it's at $2 million a year.
Yeah.
Or if it's at $2 million.
But what's the harm of including it and then?
Well, he's saying if we decide to take it out
Yeah.
later, then we have to pause and redo the whole process, and then the permitting will expire.
And extend the
Yeah. So,
filing with the.
Actually, I mean, I don't know how, maybe this is a question for Holly and Lori, but the real issue is the plans are finally ready they're finally permittable. The county said, okay, we're ready to issue it, but you must pull a permit by December 31st or be resubmitted. I'm concerned that at this point, any changes to the plans compromise our ability to actually award the project by the end of the year. Even if you decide you like the plans as they are now and you're ready to go, we need to move relatively quickly to advertise, go out to bid, so that we can award a bid and pull a permit by the end of the year. If we make further changes, there's not certainty that we can actually do that between now and accomplish all this by the end of the year. It's been a pretty slow and cumbersome process working with the county. I'm not sure that the changes you're talking about require a whole lot of county review, but several sections of the plans would have to be revised to eliminate the.
Yeah, I think his point is that we have to revise the plans and then it's another plan check with the county, and it's really been hard to know how long this will take.
Yeah, so I'm struggling to I see your point about like the funding gap. But the danger of coming up against that December 31st and having to resubmit, why wouldn't we just go out to bid as is and see what the number comes back?
That's what I'm saying. If it comes back too high, we want
Well,
to
then
make a
we're-
change, then we'll.
Yeah, then we could
But
do
we're
that
potentially-
process you're talking about, yeah.
So worst case scenario, the bid comes back even higher
Right.
than what we're anticipating. In which case, we would have to then reduce the
Resubmit,
scope anyway.
Yes,
So there's
and go
really,
back, and it probably will end up being a new submittal,
yeah,
but since they.
but we already know that we've got a gap here in the funding.
So why
Well-
not just go out to bid now as is, and then worst case scenario,
So what
this
if
is
the
our
bid
one
comes
chance.
in, what if the bid comes in as we anticipate the difference, the higher amount that we've got here?
The 1.7?
Yeah,
And you would just.
because now we're still over
Yeah,
budget.
so I mean, I think at that point, you would have some more information, you'd have bids instead of estimates. And then you could decide that, look, does it make sense to proceed with this project or regroup? There are alternatives that would allow you to proceed, if the actual bid costs are just a little higher than we have available, like an internal financing from this Parks Recreation Solid Waste Fund. The concern really is, we're not bringing more money into the Parks Recreation Solid Waste Capital Fund, right? There's been very little development for 7 years and the costs have gone up. And so, and there's not a lot left to remove from the project. So if you want to see this move forward, this might be your window.
Yeah.
If the bids come in too high and you decide not to do it, then you'll have spent a little bit more money in bidding it out. And then we can decide whether it makes sense to try to rearrange the project further. I guess I would just want to point out that this started out being as much as anything else, a walking path project. If you move forward with the project without the walking path around the park, I think you're gonna end up with a lot of disappointed residents.
Yeah, I feel like this is our one chance to like get a actual number instead of a potential number. Like we know roughly it might be 1.7, but we haven't seen the real number. And this is our one chance to try to get a number that we can work with before we know we will miss the December
So
deadline.
worst case is, we've got a 50-50 chance it'll go one way or the other. It'll either come in as we anticipate, what you've estimated. In which case we still have a funding gap, we're over budget. Or, because I don't believe it's gonna come in lower. I would be surprised, but you know, worst case is it's higher. So either way, we still have a decision to make once we've got the bids to say, do we proceed, do we refile with the county? And, you know, I understand the walking path is number one, but we've got to be able to do what we can afford. You know, to your point, there isn't any more money coming into Park and Rec, and we struggle with Park and Rec, you know, every budget. So, and I would love to see the improvements made, the full scope of the improvements, but you know, it's a constraint by having the money. So I'm okay with going and getting the bids, but I think we're gonna revisit this. We're gonna probably faced with, you know, do we change the scope? But looking at the list, I don't know what I would change. Because I mean, it's really nickel and diming it, because that's already been done with the first phase. And if you pull out the playground, then you don't get the benefit of the grant. So that's kind of like shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, that's 355,904, so we.
So I don't know that there's any harm in getting the bid
Yeah.
at this
that's what
point.
as
But
is.
I think we've got to be realistic about what the budget number is. And what we can afford.
So what I think you will know, better than you know now is we'll be several months into the fiscal year. We'll have a better, estimate of our June 30th. The numbers that we're citing is our estimated June 30th, 2027 balance. We have estimated some revenues coming into the Parks and Rec Solid Waste Fund because we do have some housing that's actually starting. And so once those are here, they'll have materialized, maybe between now and then, maybe your estimate will be slightly higher. You'll have more confidence in that budget figure.
Yeah,
Or that
I'm ready to-
fund balance figure.
Unless we take some of these benches and see if people want to buy them and have their plaque on it, seriously, I mean, because we're looking at we've got to look at every penny on it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, that's one way of, you know, getting some extra money towards the project. Because it is a community beneficial project. So it would be one way of kind of fundraising, in addition to TRF. No pressure.
There is the going out to bid, just so you're clear, going out to bid isn't free. We need to, the request before you would be to make a fairly minor budget amendment of about $1,000 to cover. We already have about $5,400 in the budget to cover the MIG costs to support the bidding. They've got to put together the bid package, the bid specifications, assist us with that effort. That was already budgeted. And then there's a permit fee at the county that is owed before we can proceed. And then MIG has adjusted their rates a little bit. So that's that additional $1,000. So it's gonna be about asking the question of going out to bid is gonna cost us about $6,500. And yeah.
Any other comments? Okay, all right, I'll go ahead. I guess I'll make a motion to go ahead and authorize staff to solicit bids for the project. Do I have a second? Second. Roll call, please.
Directors Pardonich,
Aye.
Go ahead.
Pardonich,
Aye.
Peterson,
Yes.
Logan, Mortensen,
Aye.
and Tyrone.
And then could you additionally make approve the budget amendment? It's amendment in the amount of $1,008.
Okay, I make a motion to also approve the budget amendment and the amount of $1,008 for this. All right. Call again, please.
Directors Pardonich,
Aye.
Peterson,
Yes.
Logan,
Aye.
Mortensen,
Aye.
and Tyrone.
All right, both motion pass 5-0. All right, next is fire education and enforcement information by Fire Chief Tom Peterson.
Good evening. So tonight, I'm just going to give you a recap of what took place during the 4th of July. And it's just kind of a file and report staff report for the board. And kind of give you a rundown through the staff report on what we experienced that night. Overall, it was a pretty quiet night. In 30 years that I've been doing this, I think it's one of the quietest nights that I've experienced in a really long time. Primarily with the illegal use. I would have to say if there was 5 to 10% of what is normal, that's probably what we experienced, and potentially even less. Staff used a variety of approaches on this. We used education, supported by the visible enforcement, aerial surveillance on the 3rd, and interagency coordination, as you saw with the sheriff's commander here. The one thing that we did not have that evening was aerial support with the drones. That would have been nice that evening, but it sounds like it was pretty much up in San Miguel the entire time, the drone. We did a lot of social media education on our fire department website, community signage. I'm sure everybody saw the signage around town, and then signs at the fireworks booths themselves. The fiscal aspect of it, a full revenue and expenditure review isn't really complete yet. However, we've received about 14,500 donations from TNT and the fireworks booths and the fireworks booth permit holders. And then we had some costs the evening of the 3rd with Overwatch, which was the airplane. I'm sure some of you heard it buzzing around all night. And that was $11,000 just for that night. There's an additional 15,643 that will be coming in from the 7% surcharge from the sales. And that was through the ordinance that the board passed.
What was that? Yeah, can you repeat that?
15,643 was the estimate I got from Louis Tinney from TNT.
So that's the additional, that's the surcharge.
7%, yeah.
Okay.
The area surveillance, like I said, on the 3rd, we did not observe a single illegal firework launched that evening, not one. I was in communication with the aircraft most of the evening and finally told them to leave the area for a little while and come back. And they did that, still nothing. And then they just went home at the appropriate time. I think it was later in that evening, probably around 1 a.m. We heard a couple of shots go off, and then at about 3 a.m. a little barrage. But compared to years before, it was absolutely non-existent. 4th of July activity itself, the fireworks remained relatively quiet during the day. We didn't really see a whole lot of activity, even with the safe and sane stuff. Didn't hear any illegal stuff during the day that we could determine, and observed or anything during the daylight hours with regards to illegal activity. Christmas, I can't speak tonight. So we had 2 enforcement contacts. The sheriff's commander mentioned 4. We had 2. One was one that I observed. Found the individual that launched an illegal firework. We're going to put together information with regards to the citations that will go out to those individuals, and then one later in that evening. There were other fireworks that we were trying to locate, and several of them behind the hospital area. Well, after going back and forth on those streets many times, we finally determined, because we'd come around the corner where we thought the illegal fireworks were going and there was nobody there. And we finally determined they were coming from a backyard. And fences high enough that we couldn't see where they were being launched from or who was launching them, or actually what house. So again, if we would have had the aerial surveillance on that, that would have helped out significantly. Neighborhood observations, the streets were noticeably clearer. We did not have as many fireworks in the middle of the roadway, which was fantastic for us. That opens up that roadway to be able to get through if we had a medical emergency or any other type of emergency on the other side of that. So that improved our emergency vehicle access, and was really pleased with that. Many residents voluntarily moved the legal fireworks off to the side. And again, like I say, we just had probably several contacts, 20 maybe contacts with legal firework users during the evening, just asking them to move back out of the middle of the streets. What we did find was the cul-de-sacs. A lot of the neighbors migrated down to the cul-de-sacs, which was fantastic. Get it out of the middle of the street and give us a clear access through. And so that was something that improved significantly this year for us. I would recommend, and I'll bring this up a little bit, but that we may consider looking at the ordinance next year and modifying it slightly, but I'll bring that up with regards to having them launched on their property. We did notice a little bit of an issue with some properties in the district where as I was driving around, I felt a little uncomfortable at how close people were to their house because they had very short driveway spaces. And I don't want to try and correct a hazard for access and create another hazard by having people move their fireworks too close to their house. The downtown park, I gotta tell you, in 35 years that I've been doing this, I've never seen that park that vacant and that quiet. I think there was maybe one group in there and one family that came in that bought fireworks and was just gonna do them, you know, as a family setting. And unfortunately, we had to tell them, well, if you know somebody in town, go over to their house. And I think they did, so that worked out. We had, as the sheriff's commander said, we had several patrol units around the district. As I was patrolling around, I saw probably 3 marked units, and then we had 2 undercover units. Captain Goldblum was teamed up with one of the other undercover units to be able to go out and identify and get information from the individuals that were doing illegal activity, and then just to educate the people that were doing the safe and sane stuff. And quite honestly, the evening was worked out really well. Public education, aerial surveillance, the voluntary compliance, and the interagency cooperation with the sheriff's department helped significantly. Staff's recommendation, continue that balanced approach in years to come. And if you can next year, get that aerial surveillance on the 4th, not the 3rd. I think that will help significantly. Not that we're trying to obtain citations, but you probably have a few more citations from those backyard launches and those types of things.
Just can we pause for a second, just to clarify, the issue wasn't that we didn't want surveillance on the 4th, but the company was booked up.
Yes.
So we took the 3rd as a next best alternative.
Yeah.
So what's the lead time for booking that?
Well, I've already put us on that.
So we're already on?
Well, we're on a waiting list because unless they add planes, yeah. And I don't know that they're gonna add planes yet, but if they add planes, then we'll be able to get on the 4th of the next year. Right now, all their planes that they currently have, they're booked.
But customers, we're senior customers then.
Yes, yeah. So it's kind of like, you know, that waiting list that get put on for that best hotel or something. Let's see. Staff does recommend that the board consider revisiting the district firework ordinance and allow the state approved safe and sane fireworks just in the parking lanes of the streets. These are the areas where you would park your vehicle along the curb in the neighborhoods that have it. And it gets it off the streets because people use the ladders and whatnot in the past in the middle of the streets, therefore creating that access issue for us. And as we're going down the street in the past, when they've done it in the middle of the streets, we have to wait for the fireworks to stop before they can remove the ladder, and we can get by. If we allow them that parking area, it still ties them to the front of their property. Still gives us a house to recognize that's tied to that, because a lot of the properties go to the middle of the streets in certain areas. But it's just something to consider in the future. Again, like I say, the majority of people were very responsive this year. I just don't want to create an issue by the ordinance of all of a sudden we've got a fire start as a result of bringing the fireworks too close to a residence. Again, public safety benefits were phenomenal. Open roads, emergency vehicle access, and I would say the 2026 program just showed that education and supported by the visible enforcement and everything else was beneficial and really changed the overall outcome of the 4th with regards to compliance. And a report available for any questions.
Thank you so much. Well, after last year, the tragic accident of Templeton Piano Green, I think we needed to show to the community that we are serious about safety. So I think Chief and General Manager did a great job with our attorney to come up with policies, and so thank you so much. I also want to thank TNT and all the fireworks booth for the generous donation. We needed that to be able to make sure that we could do the enforcement. So thank you so much, and hopefully, moving forward, that we could still have your support. So thank you, guys. Any questions for the Chief?
I have a few. What were the hours that we actually had the aerial surveillance on the 3rd?
So the hours of the evening of the 3rd were from 8 a.m. I'm sorry, 8 p.m. to I think it was a little after 11 when I contacted them and I said, if we can save any money at all, go home.
Okay.
So I don't know what that does to the contract. We still may be on the hook for the 11,000. We just haven't received that.
What were we booked officially?
8 to midnight.
Oh,
Yeah,
And-
so it was only probably 50 to 45 minutes short of what we were booked to.
and then the 2 contacts that you mentioned, are those 2 and the additional to the 4 that sheriff's mentioned? Or was the 2 included in the 4 that sheriff?
I'm not aware of the 4 that the sheriff's department had. Our 2 contacts, I think, were probably also
Included.
included in
Well,
that.
and I wanted to clarify, the 2 that the chief's mentioning are likely administrative citation receivers. I think the sheriff's department made contacts, but they were shy of being citable offenses. The way it was interpreted, the way I interpreted her comments anyway. We haven't kind of trued up our citations with whatever the county ended up doing, if any, in Templeton.
Yeah, it didn't sound like there were any county administrative citations issued.
Okay.
And we will have most likely 2 by our ordinance.
And were you alerted to those incidences just through like basic patrols, or were they
Yes. Yep.
not like neighborhood?
Yeah, for example, the first one was the evening I was driving down Martin and at a stop sign and 2 houses in front of me, boom. And I was like, well, that wasn't real.
Was very unlikely.
Yeah. That was
Yeah. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions?
Nothing.
No, just some comments.
Any questions from the public? Yeah.
I'm just curious, the county program that they had, do we know if that paid out at all, or if anything happened with that, or if you called in, there's some kind of thing to?
Oh, I think I know what you're referring to. So there was some bad information that went out that evening. Well, weeks before, I'll say, that if you called in your neighbor, you got a $500 reward. Yeah, that was misinformation.
No. Okay,
Bad information, false information. I think somebody was just trying to create a scare tactic.
Yeah,
it made it to Fox News, by the way.
Oh my God, I'm not surprised.
That's where I heard it.
yeah, I think
Well-
that program, that the legitimacy of the program was there was a reward if you called in somebody selling illegal fireworks. Selling, not lighting, selling, to discourage that black market activity.
So the distribution, and this is a state fire marshal task force item that they're looking at, and the distribution of illegal fireworks from those illegal suppliers are really kind of what we're focusing on. That information, as the general manager said, is something that could have gotten mixed up out there. But yeah, if you're selling illegal fireworks, it's like selling anything illegal. There's rewards, to find those people, sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions from public? Bring it back to board. If this was just informational, so if there's no other further comments or questions.
No, I just want to commend Chief Peterson and the fire department for your efforts. I think the outreach, the public outreach, the signage was great. And I know there was a lot of comments of people on Facebook who saw those signs. Some were pleased, some were not, but nonetheless, it got public attention, which I think was important. And I think as far as the enforcement, I think that's great. It's great that we had TNT and the firework booths also helping to address this issue, because I know in the past, I feel like I've been in a war zone. I've had illegal fireworks going off in front of my house, sides of my house, behind my house. And I've even seen them go horizontal or vertical. So it's not something that, I kept waiting for the shoe to drop this last 4th of July, and it was extremely quiet. I think I've only heard 2 mortars all night on the 4th, and driving around the park at 6 o'clock, there were only 2 families in the park. So I think the signage there, but I think that what was done this year needs to be repeated, because people will get complacent, and that's my fear. I think the anniversary of the Feed and Grain store, or Feed and Grain, is still in everyone's mind, and so I think people were being extremely respectful of that. But I don't want to lose sight of that in years to come. As far as your recommendation, I'm not comfortable with making that change to the ordinance, only because I don't believe TCSD has jurisdiction over streets. And so I would say that it's not a change that I would support for that reason. So, but thank you again for your efforts and your staffs as well. So.
Thank you. All right.
Can I just clarify on that one issue? We don't generally have jurisdiction in the streets, but in the past, we permitted the use of safe and sane fireworks everywhere in the district, with some exceptions. Those exceptions being school property and some property along the river, and district parks were closed. And so it was silent on whether or not safe and sane fireworks were able to be used in the street right of way, and they often were. In late 2025, when you adopted the fire code, you amended the rules considerably, and one of the things that the current ordinance does is state that fireworks may not be used in public right of way, it must be used on private property, non-commercial private property. So I do think you have the ability to enforce the use of safe and sane fireworks against the district's ordinance. So if you want to not regulate public rights of way or regulate it in a different manner, for example, rather than state they may not be used in the public right of way, something along the lines of you must maintain a path of travel for emergency vehicles down a public right of way. That would eliminate our ability or our enforcement action of safe and sane fireworks on those sort of edges of streets, for lack of a better word. So our ordinance does regulate it, whether we don't technically have some, like you say, jurisdiction over the street itself, but we do control through our ordinance how safe and sane fireworks are used. And
I just think if people are gonna use safe and sane fireworks on their private property, they need to use their judgment if it's safe. If it's risking their house, then I think that's a judgment decision.
Well,
I'm not, I know that some of the roads are too narrow to have him out in the parking.
We'll be discussing that at a later time.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add really quick. I don't want you under the impression that we can't enforce. We can enforce anywhere in the district. Streets, private property, public property. The fire code is very clear about that, and the ordinance itself says we can enforce anywhere. So we're just, it's one of those educational things where what I don't want and what I would recommend is that you give them a little bit of leeway. Because I saw a lot of very, very close fireworks to residences this year and it made me kind of nervous. That's the only reason for my recommendation.
And we'll be bringing back this item probably in a couple of months to do a full review.
if you would like, I don't know what more
Because-
we're gonna, there's not a whole lot more. We're gonna know whether those 2 citations were collected or confirmed or challenged or whatever. And we may have some better accounting of the costs.
Well, you know, talk about the policy as well as I like to, the TNT and the fireworks booths, just to see, you know, how they felt, you know, what kind of support they're thinking moving forward, because, you know, obviously, it costs a lot of money to do the enforcement, so.
We have them here now. I think.
Oh, I don't know if we wanna,
I mean,
do that.
we can bring this back again and ask them to come back and have and tee it
are
up.
you guys?
You know what, I'd be happy to come back whenever you want. I'm off the cuff. I mean, I talked to Chief Peterson earlier in the week. Excited at the results, very thankful that the board allowed the sale of fireworks again. Our sales were down. I will tell you that. Well, you'll probably notice why we committed, or we thought we were gonna do more than $15,000 in the 7%, but sales were off to me, which indicated that Templeton residents, when approached correctly, can behave like adults and they can follow rules. And outsiders can be taught that they shouldn't be coming on and trying to mix, you know, good and bad. But sales were down. I think the closing hours also affected it. I think that we meaning TNT, would probably be amenable to continue our support as we did this year. That's the number one question you've got. I think the answer would, you know, and I've got to go to my boss, obviously, but I can speak 99% that, yeah, I think we would probably continue that for at least another year, because I think that your folks are correct when you say that you do need to be continually vigilant, that a one shot in the arm is not a good inoculation. And we want to continue to be seen along with our vendors, our nonprofits that are the vendors here, as partners in something like this. That this is a long-term, we've been selling in Templeton for decades, and we want to continue.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, I'd like to see it go back to the shooting first, second, and third. We had a lot of people that just because they might be a nurse or someone who is working on the 4th, they and their family can't shoot off on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and they wouldn't do it if it would be an issue. And so there's a lot of people that are working on the 4th and can't celebrate and need to do it on a day off. So we're restricting a lot of people. We have a large hospital. We have a lot of people that have to work on the 4th. And I don't think it didn't help any to restrict just to the 4th to do any illegal fireworks. We saw on the 4th, like he was saying, with everyone with safe and sane fireworks, there was still a major reduction in mortars and everything
Yeah.
going off. So it didn't have to eliminate safe and sane fireworks to get a reduction in illegal fireworks.
Thank you. Other comments? No? Okay. All right, we'll go ahead, we'll bring it back and then I guess we'll see what happens over this month or two. To put this aside.
Yeah, you would, if you wish to adjust your rules, it would require a change to the ordinance.
Okay, so we'll see how it goes over the next month or two. All right, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next item is determination of district lobby hours. Is this carried?
Let's do the next.
That's not. Thank you. All right, that's the. Got it. Okay.
Wanna start?
Sure. Good evening, board. Happy to be here tonight to bring this discussion item before you. Natalie Clark, our finance officer, and I drafted this report, staff report, and submitted it. Noting the districts wanting to enhance recruitment and retention. It's something that affects public sector agencies profoundly and is a part of our strategic plan 25-28. And so in addition to this discussion, I'd like also to include the direct staff to change district lobby hours to appropriate and review, if appropriate, and review the district's personnel guidelines. Determine what changes need to be made and bring the updated personnel guidelines back to the board for approval ultimately. Backing up to our strategic plan 25-28. And within the administration section, section 5 in our objectives, it states recruitment and retain a workforce necessary to provide services to the community. And action item C really helps bolster and support that initiative by considering cost neutral or low cost changes to policies to enhance recruitment and retention efforts. And there's actually brackets there. There's some examples. And so those are alternative work schedules, reduce hours to the public. So in trying to move this strategic plan objective and action item forward, we met with the administration and finance committee in April. And staff had, I believe Carrie had reached out to several neighboring agencies, community service districts, and was able to compile a list of different hours of the lobby hours that are open, available to the public, along with the date that we provide those lobby hours as well. And so those are in the staff report as well. I hope I'm capturing this correctly, but I believe that there was an openness to offer flexibility in regards to both hours and days of the week that were open to the public. And so that was all notated in the staff report as well. So we took pause at that moment and conducted a small data gathering effort.
Everybody in the office. We did it on Fridays, and so you can see the for those 4 Fridays, and I mean it was pretty even throughout the week or throughout the Fridays in the months. 14 calls, 15 calls, 19 calls, 21 calls. And so from that we kind of came up with several different options that you could discuss. So we had like option A hard closure of the district lobby on Fridays, which meant no phones and no in-person. With lobby hours Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 12. And closed for lunch from either 12 to 12:30 or till 1, and then close at 4:30. This allows for either like 980s or 410s within the staff, or different hours of staff coming in to work. We have option B, which was the hard closure of district lobby every other Friday, no phones and no in person. And then the same lobby hours as, or that allowed the 980s and possible 410s. We had option C, which was soft closure of district lobby every other Friday, no in person, but take phone calls. The same district hours, the Monday through Friday at 8:30 to 12. It allowed for 980s, but it could make it really difficult to answer phone calls at times if we had short staffing. Then we had option D, which was no closure, lobby hours, just really changing the lobby hours, Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 12. Close at 4:30, and it allowed flexibility to start in any times and shorten lunch periods. And then we also had option E, which was do nothing, status quo, keep the office open Monday through Friday, 8 to 12, and then 1 to 5. So I don't know if board has any questions or.
Have you talked to the staff to get their feeling in terms of, do they like 980s or 410s?
So I did, yes, and everybody would be, pretty much everybody I spoke to was in favor of like a 980 or a 410 schedule.
So option A or B?
Yes.
I've spoken to. Yeah, because right now none of the staff, right, admin staff, none.
Yeah, well, we have a pretty hard schedule, right? It's 8 to 5 essentially, and so we're not able to offer much flexibility in terms of start time or end time or even lunchtime.
So
Because we have to cover the public, from an sort of our policy is if we're open to the public, we're gonna have 2 people present in the office to deal with safety related issue. The open to the public is actually not the the in-person activity is not the overwhelming component. It's very rare that there's a big line or multiple deals at once. It's the phone traffic. And that's something I probably was naive on when we first started these conversations. I made the assumption that, okay, well, if we're closed to the public, then we don't have to have 2 people here, but we would still answer the phones. And Natalie's concern, and it's been validated, is that, well, depending on who that person is, the phone can overwhelm their day and make it shift their responsibilities from their primary duty to just essentially customer service. So that became kind of our hiccup right now is we only have 1 person in the classification of customer service rep, and that's the person who primarily handles the phones. But when that person's not there, or we have a second or third phone call, basically everybody is on kind of phone duty. And if we are expecting to answer the phones and we only have half the people in person on a given Friday, the phone traffic is gonna be a lot more disruptive than we're accustomed to.
And it just takes 1 person being out sick, another scheduled vacation, then you're down to like 1 person.
And it ruins that.
But I mean, if we're not taking phone calls on Friday, obviously you have an outgoing message saying that, we close.
Yeah, so we would use our answering services the way we do now, on whoever calls in on a Saturday, Sunday at lunchtime or 8. And then we kind of, I don't know if our call service can do it, or Tyler, our utility billing service, but we had thought about maybe some way of when people called in, they could maybe press a button to pay by phone or by text, or looking at other options that are available.
But you'll be getting those messages, right? Like, so if someone leaves a message on Friday, you'll get them, and then if it's an urgent call,
So
then
if
you
it's,
could
yeah, so if they're
back.
urgent right now, they they go to the person on call in the utility department.
So I guess it depends on what you define as urgent.
Like
If it's like a water leak,
yeah,
then those get routed
okay,
to our call staff. But if it's somebody who needs to make a payment, those don't get handled to the next business day.
that's fine. Okay, yeah, and then, all right. Okay.
So the Friday would be treated like a Saturday. the same thing.
Exactly.
And all staff are willing to go to option A.
Well,
No, I would not say that's correct. My goal was not to restrict, the purpose of this, and this is my initiative and shame on me, maybe because it's just making it harder, but the purpose was to provide flexibility and alternatives. So whether they currently work here or they're prospective employees for future openings, to have something more than a hard 8 to 5. Right now, if somebody were to apply to work here in the office anyway, or in the field, it's 7:30 to 4, 7 to 3:30. And in the office, it's 8 to 5, no option, no other alternatives, essentially. If we were to go to closure on Fridays, we would be able to offer a variety of schedules and a variety of start times, including 8 to 5.
Okay, so
so
you,
they
okay,
wouldn't
so you're
have
okay
to
with
take
that?
anything.
Alright,
Option A, not everybody
Yeah.
becomes a
Yeah.
90.
So it's gonna be A or B. Well, and it's just that it seems that you've got to make a decision here on which one is going to be your flexibility, because this is really talking about a no cost benefit by adding flexibility. It's a way of adding an extra benefit that doesn't cost anything.
Right.
I
I mean, so to me, option B is the easiest. If someone chooses to be on a 980 schedule, the whole office is on the 980 schedule. And,
The only concern I have about option B is the every other
Yeah.
Friday.
yeah,
Yeah,
Because it lacks
Confusion.
consistency.
Yeah.
And I think that it's easier for the public to understand,
that you
these are
just
the
close on
hours.
Fridays.
Yeah, and so I look at that as you don't have you have an inconsistent, oh, is it the first Friday or the third Friday?
I'm okay with that. I was just trying to make the office or the lobby hours open as much as we could to the public, but I mean, that works too.
Yeah, I think the
Option A.
consistency is
Is
easier.
there a possibility for an option A that if in case a person could make, like we had a staff member who was working on that Friday, they could make an appointment?
Yeah, yes, this,
Oh, yeah.
okay, the idea is that the lobby would be closed and locked, but we would still do business by appointment. So if somebody needed to meet with, if they're only available on Friday, and we would then be able to determine, do we have multiple staff people here? Can we handle that type of business? For the most part, there's very little that must be conducted in person. Plan submittal or something like that, or picking up an item. I mean, payments can be done over the phone, but pay over Dropbox.
I mean, I guess my only concern is about option A is if there's district staff here that is working on Friday that happens to be the customer service position, their job is to answer phones. And so if you have a hard close on that Friday to not answer phones, that's their primary duty. So on that, on that Friday, do they answer phones? Or, I mean, I guess there's things to think about.
Well, I'm
I was
looking at
thinking
option A
410s.
as a hard closure. And everyone is on that 980 schedule for Fridays are off, that the office is closed, even to phone calls.
but there'd be.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is the Friday that
There were.
we're closed, hard closed, but we're in here. If your customer service person is
What do they do?
working
Oh,
that
what are
day,
they
that's
doing?
their primary
Primary job.
duty. And I guess that's why I was kind of maybe shying away from that one, only because.
Maybe they would have.
What if
Yeah.
we were?
And my goal is not to create a new mandatory work schedule that was just different, but rather offer alternatives, because again, a 980 schedule doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
so option B allows for that.
Well,
that
A and B
customer
both
service.
do, and we could come back to you, report how we wanna deal with it. I mean, my thinking is that we want to answer the phones when our customer service rep is here, even if the lobby's closed, because that's a primary function. But if you think that's confusing to the public and you wanna have, no phones answered on Fridays, we'll have to kind of pivot.
No, actually.
Uh,
No, I mean, they're there, if they're there, they could take phone
Yeah,
call and they
if they're
just
there.
don't, there's no one.
I mean, I
comes
guess
in.
the expectation is that we're closed to the public and no phone calls on Fridays. But if there's someone here who can answer them, then the phones would be on.
Well, you can.
And it would be a nice surprise.
Yeah, you can just, well, you can also publish it that it's only no walk-ins. It's just phone calls only.
Well,
But you can't do that on the 9/8, on the Friday that,
That's you.
and that's why I was leaning towards this option B, because it just.
It's a hybrid.
I mean, they
there's-
don't have any other, I mean, the job description, they don't do anything else besides just answering phone calls.
Well, she does utility billing and stuff like that, but I mean, that's like once, I mean, her things are, I mean. That position is taking, doing occupancy changes or taking payments or, address changes.
customer service
It's
representative.
customer service, so if she's not getting phone calls or walk-ins, then
There's not enough for
There's-
her to like call, like. For her to be calling people, like, at returning the messages, there's not enough messages for her to be returning.
I see what you're saying, leave it on.
They call and leave a message.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could do it that way.
For the week, I could be a part.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could do it that way.
Let them leave a message and then she can.
Yeah, but you only get the messages like in the morning and then after lunch. And then you wouldn't get anything that was in the afternoon till the next day. We only get them like twice a day, morning and.
We would need to do some work with the way we have support in order to have sort of that more real-time response. I think if you give us sort of the boundaries of like, hey, look, we can live with no walk-in customers on Fridays, and staff, you deal with how you wanna handle the phone calls on those Fridays, then we go back to the drawing board, figure out, what it's gonna be, and if we publish district hours are Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 4:30, closed 12 to 12:30, and sometimes we answer the phone outside of those hours. But the door's still locked, that's probably where I'm landing, because again, we don't know the hours that the customer service rep would select. And if they're here at 7:30, well, I wanna answer the phone at 7:30.
Yeah, I'm okay with closing Fridays, so.
So the way that the voicemail works is that it's just packaged at a certain time. You
It's
track
an
the
answer,
phones.
it's an answer.
It's the answering service, and so we put in there that it's being forwarded to the answering service at these certain times.
So when you mentioned the hours, 12 to 12:30 lunch, do you still have to do that if everyone is on 980? Everyone's still gonna be taking their lunch at the same time where you have to close for lunch, or could it, I guess that would be.
Staggered.
That could stay open. Because
So we pre-COVID, we didn't close, we staggered lunch assignments. And then COVID hit and some people were working from home and we weren't even open at all for a while, and like we reopened. It was just a matter of ease to assign the lunch hours. We could go back to staggering, but I will tell you that that's when we ran into problems, because there's only so many people here, and you have a couple people out sick or on vacation or sick, then it's hard to get
Five in the office, so, and you have to have two in 1.5 hour and two in the other half. It takes, I mean, today there was a couple of us here.
We were short today and we had problems with managing the phones.
Well, no,
The
no,
phone
no.
traffic is the hard part, if there's the tougher customer service component that we deal with. Because people have a real-time
And a
expectation.
lot of times staff, makes doctor's appointments or appointments around the lunchtime,
Oh, yeah.
so.
So I'm okay with doing Monday through Thursday and then close Friday. If that doesn't work out, then we could go to some other option. I mean, I really, as you mentioned, I'm really not sure about being open every other Friday. It's just.
You're talking about sort of confusing the
Yeah,
public.
exactly.
Rather coming to the office.
Yeah.
It's better to have the consistency.
And the plan
So,
is
like,
to
we
not answer phones, but we can if someone happens to be here on that Friday,
I mean, as
as a nice little.
Yeah. exactly, it'd be a
Like
surprise.
for
if they
the
said-
answering-
Or the answering service,
Or not have it on if she's here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
She just takes the call.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Okay, so this is an action, so we need a motion then? Okay,
So we like option A.
okay. Motion.
I'll make a motion that the board approve, moving to
Oh, wait.
option.
I'm sorry, I didn't do public, did I? Okay, I'm sorry, let's go, I'm gonna go to open up to public, any public comments? No, okay. Alright, bring it back.
Yeah, I did have a question, because the 980s mean that some staff are working Fridays. So would we be getting direct calls to our line? And.
Yes, the phone or the
So
only,
if we had a direct line and we needed to talk to somebody, because I work on projects, and then I would still receive that call rather than it going to.
Yeah, cause
That's-
going
that was
directly
just
to
the-
your line, it's
Yeah.
not going to the general.
only the 49.
So only the 434
Just the generic.
4900 line would go to record recommendation,
yeah.
so if we still wanted to do business or even do a meeting on.
Sure,
Friday,
absolutely.
they could get through by reaching us directly.
Or if I need to harass Maya for any reason,
Yeah.
other billing support, very specifically billing.
Too.
Yeah.
You can always find me. Except on Mondays. I already have this deal.
Okay, we'll bring it back to, go ahead.
I'll make a motion that the board approve moving to option A. The staffing change where we would have a hard closure of the district lobby on Fridays, but maintaining the office lunch hour. From 12 to 12 to 12:30.
Okay,
And then just to clarify, a lot of our rules are embedded in our personnel guidelines. Once if this approved, just wanna make sure it's clear that this isn't gonna take effect immediately. We're gonna go back and audit the personnel guidelines, make recommendations about how we would provide different options for scheduling before it'll go live.
okay, alright, okay, I'll second that. Roll call.
Directors Tyrone. Hi. Bardonish.
Aye.
Logan.
Aye.
Mortensen.
Aye.
And Peterson.
Yes.
Okay, general managers report.
We're closed on Friday. Oh,
That was the fire department.
Oops.
Yeah.
Talk about.
okay, yeah, just a few items to call to your attention. One, as was mentioned earlier, Mel Johnson actually applied for I think it's called a mini grant program through Justin Winery. And we did another grant partnership through Temple Recreation Foundation. Both rec department and TRF were awarded grants. Justin Winery wants to do a photo op right at right at the corner here where the sign is this Friday at 11 a.m. And so if there's any board members that would have 5 or 10 minutes available, it could be here at 11. Come and join the photo opportunity with Justin Winery and thank them. Our organization has applied maybe a half dozen times or more in the last 8 or 10 years through this program, and this is the first year I think we've been a direct recipient.
Oh.
So we're appreciative. We are celebrating our community celebration of the 50th anniversary of Templeton Community Services District is planned for Wednesday, August 12th during the concert in the park. I just want to remind everybody what this is going to be is we're going to have a short intermission, making it real formal sounding now. When the band takes a break at 7, we're going to have a short ceremony, and I mean quite short. So we have invited some state and federal legislators and county board of supervisors to give us a recognition and expect some representatives from those parties to be there. We'll have a few short words for the audience. It's quite a short ceremony, but we'd like any of the current board that is available to be at the steps of the bandstand promptly when the band takes its break. Because again, we've only got about 15 minutes to conduct this. We're also giving out ice cream that night. That'll happen throughout the night. You don't have to be so on time for the ice cream. But if you come late, I can't, no promises.
Are we like, I'm gonna invite both staffs?
So I want to recognize those that are there. We're going to do a press release, encouraging the community to come out, and we can include a request of former persons, but I don't know. I mean, it would be to get a hold of 50 years worth of staff members.
Stand up and stand up.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
we do that, but it just at least if they come.
Yeah.
So we have known people with this, with the ties to the district at our concerts every Wednesday. So there's former board members, former staff members, coaches, volunteers, all present on those Wednesdays. Let's see. Finally, we are in the election nomination period right now. We have 2 board seats up on the TCSD Board of Directors. Those seats are currently held by board members Mortensen and Peterson. The nomination period runs through August 7th. The county does require, the county clerk's office takes the nomination papers and they request an appointment be made if anyone is interested in running. That nomination period will be extended until the 12th if one of the current incumbents opts not to run or opts not to nominate themselves run. But that extension would not apply to an incumbent who chooses not to file before the August 7th deadline. Hope that makes sense. We already have 2 candidates for the 2 seats. According to the clerk's website, Eric Mortensen and William Nowinski are listed as candidates for office. So please keep that in mind. Those are the items that I have noted.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for general manager? On board, public, any questions? Okay. Committee reports, we have 3 of them. Parks, Recreation, and Refuse Committee on June 26, 2026. Fire and Emergency Management Committee, they met on July 2nd, 2026. And TAG, which was July 16, 2026. Any questions on any of those for the board? Public, any questions on those? Right. Activity update reports, we have several of them. We have engineering, finance, fire emergency, parks, recreation, solid waste, utilities, and I guess CHP already get their report. Any questions on those?
Yeah, I noticed that Chief Peterson, you had mentioned in your report that you were not able to provide any statistics. Is there a reason why those statistics weren't available?
Yeah, Image Trend, our current software program, has been dealing with a bug for probably 4 months now. And we're not able to run any reports. It doesn't break down any of our call volume. First month, I actually had Captain Goldblum physically go in and count every call. I said, do not do that again.
Yeah.
So, and they just got it repaired. So hopefully next month, be able to give some call stats.
Okay,
But yeah, we've missed probably 4 months worth of call stats,
okay, thank you.
We're gonna get a little bit of a cost savings then from them?
right?
Yeah, good luck with that.
This wasn't just us.
That's
This was,
software.
yeah, this wasn't just us. This was countywide.
Any other questions on any of the reports? No? Okay. Public, any? Sorry.
I do on utilities.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I noticed with utilities that we've seen for May and June is now hovering at that 5-year average. And I'm just wondering, do you have a gut feel for why that is? And is it the weather? Is it just an increase in development? Because we've been kind of below that for so long, and now this is the first time it's kind of creeping up to that 5-year average.
On Nasi, I didn't quite hear that.
You know, water.
So on the water,
production?
so in the consumption, so I'm looking at the or water production. Water production is the 5-year average. We're hitting that this month, May and June, we hit that 5-year average, where before we're actually, we're above that. I think that's that. Let me see if it's the consumption. Yeah, the consumption went up in June above the 5-year average.
Yeah, I will say this year is a little unusual where we had very warm weather in March. And
Yeah.
that drove it up. But it's hard to make sense sometimes of these monthly, of these trends as we read meters and our consumption, our meters are read at a particular time of the month, maybe the 3rd week of the month, something like that. And then our production is tallied at the beginning of the month.
Yeah,
And so there's a little bit off, and so over the year, it sort of writes itself. You'll tell the difference between production and consumption through the year, but month to month, it's a hard to decipher sometimes the reason for it, but we are getting warmer weather now, especially now. It's finally starting to feel that summer heat return after last year was so moderate. Last year was so moderate.
okay, all right. I was just curious because it had tracked, I mean, it's always seems to have like tracked long and then now it's kind of flipping up. I thought, okay, so is this kind of what we're expecting? And it's April, so it's like, what was April like? I don't think there was any real
Yeah.
weird weather in
Well,
April.
we had a really weird winter. We had a really weird winter where it rained. We got maybe a typical amount of rain, but only in about 4 or 5 days.
4 or 5, yeah.
So we had long periods of dry spells throughout the winter.
We were suspecting perhaps that folks turned on their irrigation sometime in March, perhaps, and then didn't turn it back off necessarily. And so that it just kind of keeps trending upward.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Any questions from public on the activity update reports? No, great, thank you. Director reports and for comments, any comments, reports? Yeah, I would just went with general manager and Chief Peterson. We went with a meeting. We had a meeting with John Pishong and several other planners regarding the fire department expansion because they were coming up with reasons to make it more complicated, but after some discussion, I think they saw their error. It seems like the problem is fixed and we just have to resubmit it. And it's interesting, the person that's doing the looking at the plans is the same person that was doing the Everest Park, so.
Oh, is that a good thing or a
No,
bad?
no, it's like, he's, I guess, he's a tough guy to deal with.
He's a tough nut to crack.
So, but at least for the fire department, seems to be worked out, the problems. Yeah, they wanted to make this whole thing essential building, which is gonna cost a lot more money. So, and you remember we talked about that.
Yeah.
So anyways, that was it. And yeah, nothing else to report. Okay, that's it. We're good. Meeting adjourned.